Minasan, konnichiwa. Thank you for coming to my talk. Pretty late in the day, last day, we're all pretty tired, I imagine. This won't be super long, I promise. And then we can look forward to beers afterwards, after the keynote, of course. My name is Colby, and this talk is about Bundler. It's about Bundler now, and also a bit about Bundler in the future. My name is Colby Swandale. You can find me on Twitter at Oceanic Panda. I'm usually pretty active on there. I am a Bundler core maintainer. I am also its current release manager as well. I look after putting together releases and then actually shipping them to our users. I am also a core team member of RubyGems, but I predominantly spend my time on Bundler. I live in Australia, this little dot at the bottom, in a city called Melbourne. But because we're now in the northern hemisphere, this probably looks a bit upside down to all of you. So there's the correct image for all of you. I live in Melbourne. It's a city known best for its sport, its coffee, its music, but it is infamously known for its weather. Anyone from Melbourne would know what I'm talking about there, where it can be sunny for the first half of the day and then go complete hell in the next half an hour. I work at a company called Envato. We're a marketplace for creative assets and for creative people. I'm part of the content warehouse team where I look after managing content that has been uploaded by our authors. Quickly, for anyone that is new to Ruby, firstly, welcome, and I hope you've been enjoying the conference so far. If you're unfamiliar with Bundler, I'll do a quick recap on what it is, what it does, to anyone who's unfamiliar with it. So Bundler is a tool to help manage your project's dependencies. To use Bundler, you create a special file called a gem file inside your project. You normally specify two things. The first is the source, so where you want to fetch all your gems from. The official public repository of all Ruby gems is rubygems.org. And then the second thing you normally will specify are the projects that your application depends on. So Nokigiri is an example. Rails is another example. And then once you create that gem file, you then run what's called bundle install, which is the command that Bundle will then use. The command you run in Bundle, that will take your gem file, and then Bundler will pretty much go through all your dependencies, check what their dependencies are, make sure all the versions can be used together, and then spits out what's known as gemfile.lock. And this file basically specifies all the resolved dependencies and their versions. And then you can check this into Git and then share it with other people. And then when they run bundle install, they can have the exact same versions and the exact same dependencies as you've just installed. And then finally, inside your application, you specify require bundler. And then you can start requiring your dependencies that your application depends on, and hello world. Yay. So the Bundler core team has been very busy for the past 12 months. We've been pretty active in getting stuff shipped, fixing bugs, planning for the future as well. The first big thing from last year was Bundler 117, where we introduced a number of new features to users, such as the Bundler remove command. We added a whole bunch of new options to existing commands. And I think we added some new features to Bundler Doctor as well to help diagnose any issues you have with Bundler in your local environment. We got Bundler 2 out the door. I will be talking a bit more about this soon. It's brought in some huge changes, such as dropping support for Ruby, for all versions of Ruby up until 2.3, and then all versions of RubyGems up until 2.5 have been removed. So that allows us to clean up a lot of the compatibility code that we've had for like the past 10 years and allows us to make shipping new features a lot more quicker so we don't have to worry about, because we don't have to worry about Ruby 1.8, 1.9, etc. Unfortunately, this release did not go well, as probably most of you know. We'll talk about that. And then finally, thanks to a lot of effort from Hiroshi-san, we got bundler merged into Ruby. That was a huge undertaking and massive effort, and I'm sure if he was in the room, I could not thank him enough for that. As I said, it wasn't all that great this year. I mean, if you're around at the start of this year, you know that Bundler 2 kind of broke for a lot of people in not such a great way. So I released Bundler 2 on the 3rd of January. We released a blog post detailing what the list of the breaking changes were. We kept it pretty small to kind of ironically not break things. And as the person that was organising this release, I was super excited about it. I've never committed to releasing to such a big change to a lot of users, and I was just super stoked about it. And there's my heartbeat just before I released it. Yeah, that was nervous is a bit of an understatement there. But eventually, yeah, it sucked. It sucked for me, it sucked for the users, it sucked for maintainers, it just sucked. After we pushed, pretty much as soon as we pushed Ruby Bundler 2 to rubygems.org, we started getting issues from our users. The first things that pretty much started going to hell were CI for a lot of systems. We broke Ruby on macOS. That's an interesting one. That's actually like that's like a whole new thing. Like I don't know anyone that's even come close to breaking Ruby on macOS like I have. We killed pretty much gem install bundler on anything that wasn't 2.6 on Ruby 2.6 or Ruby Gems 3. We also killed gem install Rails on pretty much the same thing again. And we also basically forced users to gem update Ruby gems. Yeah, wasn't good. So pretty much 15 hours, I think it was, after I released Bundler 2.0.0, I then immediately issued a new release, Bundler 2.0.1, that reduced the requirements for Ruby gems back from 3.0.0 to Ruby gems 2.5. And we'll kind of go into a bit of a deep, not really a super deep dive, but into like a what happened here kind of scenario. Firstly, problem one, gem install bundler. Something that Ruby Gems doesn't do, which may surprise a bit of you, is that it does not take into account the Ruby Gems version you are installing your gem into, or the Ruby environment. All Ruby Gems does is that if you do gem install bundler, it will just try to fetch the latest update, like the latest version that has been published. So if you're running a Ruby environment, in this case 2.2, and the latest published version of bundler is requiring at least 2.3, Ruby Gems will not take that into account. It will just give you a flat out error saying you can't install this version, instead of looking for a version of bundler that is, the latest version of bundler that is compatible with bundler 2.2. The same thing for the Ruby version as well. So for the Ruby Gems version. So in this case, we got a perfectly valid Ruby Gems and Ruby environment. So 2.4.6, Ruby Gems 2.7.9, both are supported today. But again, Ruby Gems doesn't take into account its own version when it's resolving stuff, and so users were presented with just an error page. And because bundler has been around for so long, a lot of the users were just doing gem install bundler because it's worked for like the past 10 years. They haven't had to change anything. They haven't had to bother with what major version they've had to install. And so this became a huge issue on CI systems because they were just doing gem install bundler. And so when we published Ruby Gems 2, a lot of CI systems were just fetching the latest version, and as a result, we were just breaking. So if you want to install bundler, but scope it to a major version, you can do this in RubyGems. Gem install bundler dash. This is the -- version flag, and then you can specify just a requirement. So in this case, I'm specifying more than Ruby 2.0, but less than 3. The second problem, the version auto switcher. Now this is actually an interesting feature. This has been living inside RubyGems for about the past 2 years, but it only started kicking in when we published Bundler 2. And what the version auto switcher does is basically solve this problem here. So if you're like any normal Ruby developer and you work on lots of different Ruby projects, you probably have lots of different gem files that are using lots of different versions of Bundler. And so when we published Bundler 2, there was probably a good case you're going to have gem files that are using Bundler 2, some that are using Bundler 1. And what the version auto switcher does is that it pretty much removes that requirement where you have to specify the exact version to run the correct version of Bundler. So you typically just bundler install, and then Bundler would just be activated with the correct major version for you every time. You don't have to worry if it's Bundler 1 or Bundler 2 or Bundler 3, for example. And the way it works is that in your gemfile.lock, the bundled with declaration will get looked at, and then that will determine what major version of Bundler gets activated. So in the Bundler 1 gemfile.lock, Bundler 1 gets activated, but then if you have a gemfile.lock that's using Bundler 2 gets activated. But the thing that most people may not know is that this is actually a RubyGems feature. This is not Bundler. Inside RubyGems, this is called the Bundler version finder, and its job is to basically filter the possible versions of Bundler that can be activated by RubyGems. So here's just a quick table to kind of see how this works in RubyGems 3. So I have 5 versions of Bundler installed. So 2.01, 2.02, Bundler 1, Bundler 3. And the way it works is that it looks at your gemfile.lock, pulls out that bundled with version, and it will pretty much filter the list of possible versions that can be activated by RubyGems. So in RubyGems 3, it matches on the major version, same behavior as Bundler 1. So Bundler 2.01, 2.02, 2.10 are all compatible. And then RubyGems will just activate whatever the latest version of that is. So in this case, it's 2.10. But unfortunately, this is where it kind of gets tricky because there's different rules between RubyGems version 2 and RubyGems version 3. In RubyGems 2, it actually just matches on the exact same version. So if you have a gemfile.lock that's been locked with 2.01, RubyGems is going to look for the exact same version. Any other version will be filtered out by RubyGems. And then if you're using RubyGems 2, you may get this really cryptic error. And this has been a source for a lot of problems for people, getting this really cryptic error. And unfortunately, it's actually a RubyGems 2 bug. This has been, a huge pain because one, we can't really do anything about it. We fixed it in RubyGems 3, and we've fixed it in recent versions of RubyGems 2. But for pretty much all the versions of RubyGems 2 that most people have on their laptops and their servers, there's just not much we can really do about it. But yeah, if you see this error, what this is essentially saying is that it can't find the exact same version of Bundler. And what you do is that you install the exact same version of Bundler from RubyGems. And this is actually why Bundler 2.0.0 depended on RubyGems 3, was to not have users deal with this bug, because we believe that this would have been a huge issue, and it has been a huge issue for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, what happened is that more users were having issues with bundler requiring RubyGems 3 than bundler gems having to need the exact same version of bundler installed. And you're probably wondering, well, why the hell is RubyGems why the hell is RubyGems 2 depending on the exact same version of bundler? So why does it need the exact same version of bundler that's in your gemfile.lock? And it was part of a larger idea of having bundler manage its own version, so bundler managing itself, like you manage any other gem in the gemfile.lock. But that feature never really came to fruition, and it kind of got hit on pause about a year ago, but the code kind of still lingered on RubyGems. So it was this idea that other contributors had quite a while ago. So yeah, unfortunately we've been having to deal with this problem. When I published RubyGems bundler 201, I did make a note about if you run into this issue, if you run into this issue, this is what you do. But we have still been receiving some of these errors from users into Github, so we will also be looking at updating some of the documentation as well to make this error a lot more clearer to users. So if you're still having issues with bundler 2 and RubyGems in your current environment, I recommend updating RubyGems to the latest version. If you're in an environment where you can't update RubyGems, we are currently working on backporting some patches into RubyGems 2 that hopefully get released with a Ruby patch soon. Now, some people have been asking us, well, why the hell didn't bundler 2 just read the bundler 1 lock file? And the simple answer is that breaking changes happen. So the issue that bundler has been trying to deal with is how to keep surprises low, ironically, and how to make sure that people who are using bundler 1 don't accidentally go straight to bundler 2 and then have something break in their application if they're depending on something that is specifically a bundler 1 feature that we break in a new major version. But in hindsight, probably not the best handled idea. And we've been working on fixing, we've been working on fixing some of these issues that users have been experiencing by working with users and kind of going through some of the areas that we can alleviate. So core team member David Rodriguez has been working on bundler thanks to a Ruby Together grant to kind of go through bundler and kind of go through some of these issues and see where we can kind of alleviate some of these pains. In a PR that's being worked on at the moment, we're looking to allow bundler 2 to read a bundler 1.lock file, but we will obviously raise an error. So you can see that you've gone into bundler 2 that you may not have intended to do. The final problem is communication, specifically Slack. So the bundler core team has a Slack channel that is open to anyone, and some of these important decisions that were made for bundler 2 were made inside the Slack channel instead of like a public forum such as like GitHub. And this, in retrospect, this was a pretty terrible idea because Slack is just not anywhere near as accessible as being able to go on GitHub is. So going forward, sorry, I already talked about that. Going forward, we're going to move all decisions to GitHub to make sure that if we're making any huge breaking changes to Bundler, it will be in the open that anyone can have easy access to. So some of the ideas that we have for improving major releases in the future, actively engaging feedback from the community about some of these changes that we're making, probably a longer pre-release cycle to make sure that people have enough time to test the pre-releases before we make a final breaking release change. And then more transparency around the breaking changes themselves. So publishing like even RFCs or even just PRs with like the proposals in them and such. I'm definitely open for more feedback if you have a better idea on how to solve some of these issues. So thank you for being patient while we fix some of these issues in Bundler. I'm really sorry that it's been taking such a pain in the ass that it has been causing to users. And I understand that I am, as the release manager, I am the final person that has the call and the responsibility to make sure that we don't break things for our users. And so careful treatment has to be, especially for Bundler, has to be made to make sure that any breaking changes that we do make has the minimum interruption possible that we can make. So what's coming up in Bundler? First thing is Windows support. This has been worked on from members of the community. We have a Azure pipeline that's now being used in Bundler and being tested against every PR. This is actually not passing. There are errors that are happening. We make it go green so that it doesn't interrupt the status flags on GitHub so that we can more easily merge, but there is continuous work being performed for Windows support. And we'll get there eventually. I think there's only about like 60 tests or so that are breaking at the moment. So it'll be good to get that going. And yeah, specifically, there are failing tests. Yep. It definitely needs more work. We want to have JRuby and Truffle Ruby support as well. We are looking for contributions for the community to make that happen. The next upcoming release from Bundler will be Bundler 2.02. There hasn't been a release for quite a while now. We've been letting the dust settle a bit to make sure that Bundler 2 kind of settles down. But the upcoming release will be fixing a number of issues that users have been experiencing. And then the next the next feature release will be Bundler 2.1. This is being put together at the moment. It's going to include a few new commands. I think there's going to be a few new options as well. This will probably be a few months away, but stay tuned for that. One thing we are going to do in Bundler 2.1 is we're going to start deprecating things. The core team member, David Rodriguez, thanks to the grant from Ruby Together, has been going through all the breaking changes that we have planned for Bundler 3 and making sure that all the deprecation messages make sense, that there is a clear path on the new behavior that you should be using for Bundler 3, and we'll be giving you plenty of time to make that change happen. So, for example, here's an example for the show command. So show is kind of like this weird combination between listing gems and showing some information about a gem. So you can see we're going to deprecate this command in Bundler 3, and we're pointing out with a warning saying there's a new command called bundle info that you should be using to pull information about this gem. Some of the other features coming in Bundler 2.1 is the cleaning Git extensions. We recently, I think in Bundler 1.17, made a change so that it bundle clean also clears gem extensions. So we're going to extend that to Git extensions as well. For Bundler 3, yeah, this is going to be the release where we intentionally break some stuff. First thing is going to be remembering options. So at the moment in Bundler, pretty much any option you pass into things like bundle install, bundle update will be remembered, so that if you then afterwards do bundle install without any options, it will then pull all the configuration that's been remembered out from the bundle config and then run all that again. This has been a pretty confusing bit of behavior for a lot of people, so we're going to be removing that in Bundler 3 so that if you want to give command options to bundler install in Bundler 3, you have to give it every time, or you have to configure it with bundle config. This one is a bit tricky. I think this one needs a bit more explanation, a bit more thought behind it personally, but we'll go with it. So we're going to get rid of some of the some of the options in bundle install. Some of them are like path only without. We found that when users need these options, they kind of need them permanently. So what we're going to do is we're going to have people use bundle config to permanently set that option instead. And this ties in with like the not remembering options in Bundler 3 as well. There's no way for bundle exec to be given like a path. So if you do a bundle install with a path, things like bundle exec, you can't really do that with because there's no path option in bundle exec or pretty much most of the other commands. So we recommend you run bundle config. But all these configuration options typically have environment variables as well that you can also set. So you don't have to have things persisting in the file system if you don't wish to. The next thing will be the default bundler command. So if you just use bundle without any action, it will just run bundle install like that. For Bundler 3, we're going to change that to just show like a help menu, and we'll make it more clear if you want to install your gems, use bundle install. So we're going to get rid of that shortcut. For bundle updates, we're going to get rid of the bundle, the update all gems feature by default. So if you do bundle update without any like gem that you specifically want to update, it will update all the gems. We don't think that's behavior we would encourage. So what we're going to do instead is that you specifically have to pass the all flag. And so if you want to update all the gems, you do bundle update --all. Otherwise, you have to supply a gem that you specifically want to update. So bundle show, yeah, it's this, as I said, it's a weird combination between listing gems and showing an information about a gem. So by default, it will just list gems, but then if you give it a gem name, it will print the path to the gem. It's a bit awkward. You can also do bundle show rate --verbose, I think, and then it will show you like the description, the name of the gem. We're going to split that command into two and make it a bit more intuitive for our users. We're going to call it bundle info and then bundle list. And as you can probably guess, bundle list will just list your gems. Bundle info will show you information about the gem. And then we're going to get rid of some commands entirely from the bundler core. They will be removed into either a bundler plugin or into a bin stub. So the first one is bundle viz. This is like a command to generate like a graph of all your gems in the gem file. this command hasn't really been paid attention to at all. So we're going to move it out of bundle core, and then we're going to put it into a plugin that you can then put into your gem file, and you can use it then the same way if you want. But we think most people don't really use this feature. And then bundle console. Bundle console pretty much just starts an IRB session with all the gems set in the environment. Again, we don't think many people really use this feature, so we're going to look at moving that outside of bundle, out of the core library. We're maybe going to put this into a bin stub that users can generate if they wish, or make it another plugin. We're not sure yet. So we published a blog post about 5 months ago saying that we were going to change how the releases work, and that we're going to publish a major version each year. After the Bundler 2 release, I'm a bit cautious about that now. What I'm going to say instead is that we are working on Bundler 3 with the intention of getting it released within the next 12 months, but we're going to take our time, and we're definitely going to make sure that we sort out any issues that users are going to be experiencing. So what about Bundler after Bundler 3? So as was revealed in Matt's keynote, in the Ruby 3 status update, we're going to merge Ruby gems and Bundler into the same library. So they'll become essentially the same thing. This has been like a thought for both the Ruby gems and the Bundler team for quite a while now. If you go back about 6 years ago, these two teams were pretty isolated from each other. There wasn't much collaboration with them, but the Bundler team and the Ruby gems core team have now become mostly the same people. So what we're going to do is we're going to merge those teams together, and we're also going to merge the repositories together. And so, you'll see in GitHub, we're going to archive the Bundler repository, and then we're going to move that into the Ruby gems repository, and we're going to move all the issues as well. So Bundler and Ruby gems have become a lot more friendly in recent years. So this is going to be a great opportunity to go through both repos and actually go, okay, what are the pain points that we've been having with Ruby gems and Bundler? How can we make this easier for both libraries? And hopefully get rid of some of the legacy stuff, make things faster, make things better. I didn't go to Shibata-san's talk, but it will be posted on YouTube. If you watch that, he'll probably explain in more detail about what's actually going to happen with this Bundler merge and the Bundler and Ruby gems merge. Finally, this Bundler talk will probably be the last one. I talk about Bundler every 2 years at RubyKaigi, and by the time 2021 rolls around, Ruby gems and Bundler will probably be the same thing. So I'm guessing it will be more of a Ruby gems talk than anything. If you would like to find me on the interweb, I'm on Twitter at Oceanic Panda. I'm on Colby Swandale on GitHub. There is a Bundler Slack channel that is open for anyone. You can go to slack.bundler.io, and you can find us in the Bundler channel. If you have any questions or information you're trying to find about Bundler, you can find us on bundler.io. It has lots of guides, lots of documentation about how things work and how you can solve some of the current problems that a lot of people have with running gems inside production environments. Lastly, if you have any issues specifically with Bundler or any feature requests, you can find us on GitHub at bundler/bundler. It might be changing soon, but I think GitHub automatically redirects it to whatever repository we change it to afterwards. Arigatou gozaimasu. Any questions?
Hi, awesome talk. Thank you for doing this. My question is, so every time when I want to understand new features of Rails, or do some debugs, or want to see understand how things work internally, usually I do Rails new, create new project, and do some work. But every time you do that, you have to do a bundle install, and so every time you do it, you have to install gems, and it takes time away. And so I kind of have to wonder that is there any way that I can avoid that?
It depends how bundle has been configured. It should install the same set of gems. I mean, like if the gem's already been installed inside the RubyGems environment from bundler, it shouldn't have to reinstall it. But I would check your like bundler configuration to see if you're installing into like a local path or if Rails is doing something I don't know about. I can check. Yeah, I can follow up for you.
Oh yeah, thank you very much.
Nice.
So my yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Nice. Cool. Thank you.